All right, is it recording?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, perfect. Let me pull the PowerPoint up. All right, and Mr. Nye, if you can take it from there.
Right. Good evening. Welcome to the May 6th meeting of the Anderson Township Board of Zoning Appeals. My name is Jeff Nye. I will serve as your chair of the Board of Zoning Appeals today. Due to the declared state of emergency in the nation, in Ohio, and in the township, in the order of the Director of the Ohio Department of Health issued March 12th, 2020 in response to the COVID-19 emergency, this meeting is being convened telephonically. The agenda for today's meeting is available on our website, www.andersontownship.org. Click Board of Zoning Appeals under Upcoming Events to review information for Case 8-2021 BZA. It's our only case on tonight's agenda. The board will accept public testimony via phone or video during the public hearing for the case. Before public testimony is provided, I will read an oath and you must swear in before speaking. We ask that all participants mute their phones and only unmute if speaking. If you're going to speak, please state your name and address. It's also helpful to speak directly into your phone as opposed to using the speaker feature if you're calling in by phone. At each of our board meetings, we encourage attendees to complete a sign-in sheet, including their name and address. At some point during the meeting, if you'd like to electronically sign in, please send an email to bbowers@andersontownship.org. That's BBOWERS@andersontownship.org. Before the meeting begins, I'd like to identify the appointed Board of Zoning Appeals members that are participating in the meeting. I'm Jeff Nye. I am the chairman tonight. John Halpin is the vice chair. Is that right, John?
No, no, I'm the secretary.
That's what I thought. Okay, boy. The notes are wrong. I apologize. Paul Shekels, you're the vice chair. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay, well, Paul Shekels is the vice chair. John Halpin is the secretary. Paul Sion and Steve Haber are our other regular members. Our alternates, Amy Richardson and Scott Lawrence, are also here tonight. The other township personnel joining the meeting are Brad Bowers and TJ Ginty. Each of us will do our best to state our name before beginning to speak, so anyone who's joining us via phone can follow along. In the past, I've been calling on board members individually to help assist with that as well. We thank you for joining us. We appreciate your patience and understanding during these difficult times. If I had a hammer, I would now bang it, and this meeting of the Anderson Township Board of Zoning Appeals is hereby called to order. This board was established pursuant to Section 519.13 of the Ohio Revised Code by the Anderson Township Board of Trustees to provide administrative relief to any person or entity adversely affected by the Anderson Township zoning resolution. Will the secretary please call the roll?
Mr. Sion.
Here.
Mr. Haber.
Here.
Mr. Halpin. Mr. Halpin.
Present.
Mr. Shekels.
Here.
Mr. Nye.
Here.
And before we get going, I do want to make a reminder, if everyone can mute yourself when not speaking. Getting a lot of background noise, and it may be coming from me too, so let me.
All right. Thank you for attending this meeting. Please be aware this meeting is being recorded. Let me quickly outline our procedures and we'll start our agenda. When we get to the cases, a summary of the appeal is presented by staff. Then the appellant will present its case after being sworn in. The board members may then ask questions of the appellant. After that, I'll ask for anyone who wishes to speak in support of the appeal, and they'll be permitted to testify after being sworn in. When those persons supporting the appeal are finished speaking, we'll ask for anyone opposed to the appeal, who will then be sworn in and then speak. The board will have an opportunity to ask questions of each speaker if they have any. Are there any changes to tonight's agenda?
No changes.
Changes to the agenda. I'd ask that the agenda be approved by unanimous consent. Is there any objection from the board? Hearing none, the agenda is approved by unanimous consent. The second item on our agenda is approval of the minutes for the March 4th, 2021 meeting. Staff, do we have any changes to the agenda, changes to the minutes?
A few weeks ago, Mr. Haber and Mr. Lawrence both sent in changes to the minutes. Staff made those changes, and the most updated version was included in your packet last Friday.
Got it. Okay. So I'd ask for approval of the minutes by unanimous consent. Is there any objection from the board? Hearing none, the minutes are approved. The third agenda item is consideration of case 8-2021 BZA, a variance request to allow an 8-foot-high privacy fence in the rear yard where only a 6-foot-high privacy fence is permitted for the property located at 7383 Rowanta Avenue, submitted by Clinton Crawford. Will the staff please present, staff, let me swear you in, and then let's present case 8. Please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Okay, will you please present case 8?
Thank you, Mr. Nye. This is PJ Ginty with Anderson Township Planning and Zoning Department. Before you this evening is case number 8, 2021 BZA. The applicant is Clinton Crawford, and this is located at 7383 Rowanta Avenue. The zoning on the property is C residence. And this is a variance request to allow an 8-foot-high privacy fence in the rear yard area.
Hey, PJ, can you hold on 1 second?
Mm-hmm.
Do we have Mr. Crawford on the line? Mr. Crawford, are you here?
Yes, I am.
Okay, great. Sit tight. We'll come back to you in a minute. I didn't want to go through this all if you weren't here. All right, go ahead.
Great,
that has
thank you.
happened before.
So the variance request is to allow an 8-foot-high privacy fence in the rear yard where only 6-foot-high privacy fences are permitted per Article 5.2A9 of the zoning resolution. The applicant has proposed to construct an 8-foot-high wood solid privacy fence in the rear yard area. The proposed fence would be 45 feet in length and extend along the applicant's western property line. Article 5.2A9 of the zoning resolution states that fences shall not exceed 6 feet in height in the rear yard. A little bit of the history: the house was built in 1961, and the current owner purchased the property in December 2020. There's no other zoning history on file for this property. This is a view of the property map. So as you can see, it's located between 5 Mile Road and Township Green Space in this area off to the east. To the north of the property is an existing single-family residence. To the west of the property is an existing single-family residence. And to the south is a combination of a retail development. Some offices are located in there as well. This is an aerial map of the property showing the green space off to the east, the single-family residence, and the pool that was mentioned in the applicant's testimony, as well as the retail and office development down to the south. This is the topography map of the property. The rear yard itself, where the fence is going, is relatively flat, but it does slope up from the south, or from the north up to the south, so going back towards this way. Same within the front yard as well. So from Rowanta Avenue, the house sits a little bit up, and the proposed fence would sit above Rowanta Avenue. This is the applicant site plan. It's kind of hard to tell since it was scanned in, but the applicant has proposed that the 8-foot tall privacy fence go on their western property line, and it would be located entirely in the rear yard area behind the plane of the house. So this fence would be approximately 45 feet in length. Here's an image looking to the south towards the existing residence on the property. And this is looking down towards the south as well. And you can see the topography kind of slopes up towards the south. So there is an existing chain link fence located on the property as well. Again, a more zoomed in version of this, looking towards the south, towards the office and retail development. This is looking towards the northwest area of the property, and the proposed fence would start at the back corner of the existing residence and go down 45 feet to the south along an existing neighboring fence. This is looking towards the south at the existing 6-foot high privacy fence. And again, the fence would be located at the back corner of the house going south. This is the existing 6-foot high privacy fence located on the property line between the property in question and the neighbor to the west. This is looking over towards, to the left is township owned green space. This is looking towards the south, towards an existing shed on the property and a retail development towards the south. Staff findings. So staff is of the opinion that the variance could be substantial. The proposed fence is 8 foot high, which is 2 feet higher than permitted per Article 5.2A9 of the zoning resolution. The essential character of the neighborhood could be altered, and adjoining properties could suffer a substantial detriment as a result of the variance. The proposed 8 foot high privacy fence is proposed to be located on the property line with no setback to the neighboring property to the west. In addition, the proposed fence would be visible from Rowanta Avenue and appear to be higher due to the increase in grade to the south. The variance would not adversely affect the delivery of governmental services. The owner's predicament can be feasibly obviated through some method other than a variance. So the applicant would be permitted to build a 6 foot high privacy fence in the rear yard and be in compliance with the zoning resolution. And staff is of the opinion that the spirit and intent behind the zoning requirement would not be observed by granting the variance based on the height of the proposed fence, the setback of the proposed fence to the neighboring property line, and the visibility of the proposed fence to Rowanta Avenue. These are the standards to be considered for this variance request, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that the board has.
Thank you. Mr. Haber, do you have any questions for staff?
None, thank you.
Mr. Shekels, do you have any questions for staff?
None, thank you.
Mr. Halpin, do you have any questions for staff?
No questions, thank you.
Mr. Sine, do you have any questions for staff?
No, thank you.
Okay, I do have a couple of questions. I think, can you go back to slide 11, I think? Okay, so you're saying that the fence would extend only from the rear corner of the house that we see right there, is that right?
That's correct. Yeah. So according to the applicant's letter and site plan, the proposed fence will be located entirely in the rear yard area. So in the rear yard, you're permitted a 6 foot high privacy fence.
Okay. One of the reasons I ask that is that the drawing submitted with the application showed the 8 foot fence coming all the way to the fence that runs right next to the neighboring back door, which is partly in the side yard. And maybe it's a question for the applicant, but the variance request does not extend to that last 6 or 8 or 10 feet of fence. Is that right?
So according to the applicant's submittal, it was to be located in the rear yard area. So I guess the specifics of that would have to be a question for the applicant.
Yeah, okay. Can you go to slide 12, I guess? So we can see two wood fences here. There's a 6 foot privacy fence right there. Yep. That's the neighbor's 6 foot privacy fence. Is that right?
According to the applicant's submittal, that's correct.
And that white one in the back, as far as we know, is probably also the neighbor's, but not the.
Yeah, so
not the
it wasn't. Yeah, it wasn't brought up in the testimony, but it looks to be located on the neighbor's property line.
And are those, do we know if those fences are permitted and conforming?
So according to the applicant, it was a 6 foot high privacy fence. That was in their submittal letter.
Okay. So we have had a couple of similar requests in the last couple of years. There was one on Immaculate Avenue or Drive or whatever, Court maybe. Do you happen to have that case handy?
Yes, I can pull up the resolution for, I believe it was case 17-2019. So let me stop sharing so I can get out of this screen. Would you like to see the resolution, or was there another specific piece from that case that you would like me to show?
I think well, so there were 4 or 5 different applications and 4 or 5 different variances that were applied for. One of them in particular related to a fence that, as I recall, was about 7.5 feet tall on the applicant's side yard and in the neighbor's rear yard, very similar to this. I understand that this request is in the backyard, but it was similar. I don't recall whether we specifically addressed that in the resolution separately, or maybe we should look at the application. My memory, though, is that we denied the request for something over 6 feet on that. That's what I'm trying to refresh my memory on.
Okay, let me pull up the resolution so that the board and the members of the public have the benefit of looking at it as well.
Okay, thank you.
Just bear with me and I can get that pulled up. All right, and is everyone able to see my screen?
I can.
Yes.
Neighbor can.
Yes.
All right, thanks everyone. So this is the resolution for case 17-2019 BZA. The applicant in this case requested 6 different variances. The first variance was variance A, which was a request to allow an existing 7 foot 7-inch high privacy fence in the side and rear yard, where only 4 foot high 75% open fences are permitted in the side yard, and a 6 foot high privacy fence is permitted in the rear yard. So let me scroll down to the conditions of this case. So on January 2nd, 2020, the Board of Zoning Appeals granted the variance. However, there was a condition placed on it that the existing privacy fence be modified to a maximum 6 foot high privacy fence in the side and rear yard area.
Okay. All right, those are the only questions I have about that. I do want to ask another case, but before I do, Mr. Haber, do you have any follow-up for staff based on any of that?
None. Thank you so much.
Mr. Shekels?
No, thank you.
Mr. Halpin?
No.
Mr. Sion?
No, thank you.
Okay. Now, we've had one other similar case that I recall, and I think it was on Alnetta or Altadena or something like that. Do you know what the case I'm referring to?
Yeah, it was there. We had a privacy fence. I believe it was a 7 foot tall privacy fence on Maycliff. So let me see what number that was. So this is case number 9-2019 BZA, and this is for 1118 Maycliff Place. So this was a variance request to allow a 7 foot high privacy fence to be located in the side and rear yard area of the property, where only 4 foot high 75% open fences are permitted in the side yard, and 6 foot high privacy fences are permitted in the rear yard. And going down to this signed resolution, the Board of Zoning Appeals granted the variance to allow a 7 foot high fence in the side and rear yard.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Mr. Haber, do you have any follow-up questions based on that?
Nothing, thank you.
Mr. Shekels?
None, thank you.
Mr. Halpin?
No, thanks.
Mr. Sion?
No, thank you.
Okay, and I just thought of one other follow-up question I had. Looking,
Would you like me to go back to the presentation?
yeah, go back to the presentation. I'm trying to think of what slide I might want to ask about. I guess maybe slide 5 would be helpful. So obviously the subject property is in red, the neighboring property to the left. The neighboring property is a corner lot. Corner lots always cause a little confusion, to me at least. Are you able to tell from this where the rear yard of that lot is?
Yes, so the rear yard of 1396, I'm not sure if it's Blue Orchard or Rowanta, but to the west of the property in question. I'm assuming it's Blue Orchard, 1396 Blue Orchard. So the rear yard of the property would be, if you follow the laser pointer, basically where the pool is located, since that's the only area they can meet a rear yard setback.
Okay. And again, a 6 foot high privacy fence would be permitted in that rear yard.
That's correct.
Right. Okay. Okay. Sorry, one more time around in case anyone has any follow-up. Mr. Haber, any follow-up?
No, thanks.
Shekels?
No,
None, thank you.
Mr. Halpin?
no, thanks. No comments.
No, thank you.
Okay, all right. Will the that's it for staff. Will the appellant or the appellant's representative, Mr. Crawford, please unmute yourself, speak into your microphone, state your name and address.
My name is Clint Crawford, 7383 Rowanta Avenue.
Will you please raise your right hand? Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you'll give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Okay, please tell us anything you'd like to tell us about this appeal.
The fence company simply suggested an 8 foot to block the neighbor's view. I would be more than thrilled with it if you guys would allow a 7 foot privacy fence. The main problem with the 6 foot is it still doesn't block their view from looking out the window at us. And then also, if I could build the fence off of my property line a little bit, if that also would help with anything. It's very important to me. I would greatly appreciate if you guys would consider the 7 foot high fence. And like I said, it would only be going to the back corner of my property. It's not going up. It does not go up the hill or to the back edge of my property line near the building behind my house.
Okay, is there anything else you'd like to tell us?
I don't think so. Thank you.
Before I turn it over to the board for questions, you did submit a written letter dated, as if there's any other kind of letter. You did submit a letter dated April 11th, 2011, where you described the reasons that you'd like to have the fence. I think it's the preference for the board to hear some verbal testimony to that effect too. I don't want you to read the letter or anything, but can you describe for us the reason for the application?
The reason of the application is because it all started over a tree that the neighbors wanted me to cut down, and it ended up being in their property. And they just kept pestering me over it. I couldn't even get into my house after work before they would come over and pester me about it. And we just simply did not get along. They've come out and threatened me and my children, or come out and threatened me in front of my 4-year-old daughter and 1-year-old son. They threatened to beat my ass because my 1-year-old son shined a flashlight in their yard the night before, and it's gotten a little out of hand, and I just would like to have my privacy and stay on my side. I feel like easy to get along with. How I used to bring up their garbage cans for them. Until all this started, I want this fence so I can just stay on my side. They can stay on their side, and that's all.
Okay, thank you. I'll turn it over to the board for questions. Mr. Haber, do you have any questions for Mr. Crawford?
Yes, Mr. Crawford, you just mentioned that though you're asking for an 8-foot tall fence, that you would be happy with a 7-foot tall fence. So my question is, a 7-foot tall fence, will that accommodate your concerns?
Yes, sir.
I have no other questions. Thank you.
Mr. Shekels, any questions for Mr. Crawford?
None presently.
Mr. Halpin?
I have no questions.
Questions?
None at the moment, thank you.
Okay, Mr. Crawford, I realize you're not calling in by video here, so I'll try to talk you through the same question that I asked to staff earlier. The written materials for your application say that the fence will come no farther north than the rear line of your house, right?
Yes, sir. That is correct.
Sorry, my daughter just stuck her head in. Okay, so your written material said the fence will come as far north as the rear line of your house and not farther. The drawing submitted with your application appears to show a fence that goes all the way to where the neighbor's black chain link fence meets their gray chain link fence, which is 6 or 8 or 10 or so feet into your side yard. Do you know what I mean?
Yes, sir. Are you talking about the line that I drew in?
I'm talking about what I think is the proposal from EME Fence. It's got
Yes, the green line from EME. That is where I was wanting the fence, and I guess it might have been drawn up incorrect from EME. I was just wanting it to the back corner of my house, like I said.
Okay. That's what I was trying to get clarity on. Thank you. So okay. You said you've applied for an 8-foot fence. You'd be happy to have a 7-foot fence because that would be tall enough to block the windows. I have 2 questions about that. One is, do you know if you can get a 7-foot fence? My guess is that these boards are prefabricated to be either 6 or 8 feet, and EME may not install a 7-foot fence. I don't know. So one is, can you get a 7-foot fence? 2 is, if your goal is to, hold on, let me get the second question out, and then I'll turn it back over to you. The second question is, if your goal is for the fence to block the neighbor's view of the backyard, your backyard, essentially, will a fence that comes to the back corner of your house achieve that goal? Because there are still some windows and a door on your neighbor's house that are in your side yard, essentially. And I asked, and whatever the answer is, it's fine. I'm asking mainly because I don't want to put you in a situation where you build a fence to the corner of your house, and you realize, darn, I should have, asked for another 8 or 10 feet or something, and have to come back and do it again. Are you certain that that is going to be sufficient for you? So your response to those, please.
It would be a great improvement. I know they still would be able to peek around and see us if they really felt the need to or wanted to. I mean, I obviously would love to build, first I wanted to build it all the way to the front corner of my house and put a gate in. But then I learned that I could only build it to the back corner of my house, so that is why I got that bid. So anyway, if that answers the second question you said, and then let's see, what was the first thing you asked again? I'm sorry.
The first question was,
the height of the, I might end up building it myself anyway. We'll see, because I know EME fence company's backed up for 3 or 4 months, and I simply don't want to wait that long. So I can buy 8-foot boards and cut them down myself. I've built many fences. I've built decks with my dad. I'm in trades. I've done that stuff my whole life. So.
Okay. All right. I don't have any additional questions. Mr. Haber, do you have any follow-up for the appellant?
None, thank you.
Mr. Shekels?
One.
Mr. Halpin?
No, none.
Mr. Sion?
None.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Crawford, please sit tight. It's possible that we'll come back to you with some additional follow-up later, but let me move on. Is there anyone on the line who would like to speak in support of the appellant in case 8-2021 BZA? If so, please unmute yourself and let me know you're there.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. My name is Michael Crawford. I'm Clint's father.
Mr. Crawford,
And
what is your address?
I reside at another location at 625 Mary Ingalls Highway in Fort Thomas, Kentucky. I am a co-owner of...
Hold on one second, if you would. If you could please raise your right hand to be sworn.
Yes,
Do you
sir.
swear or affirm that the testimony you'll give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Okay, go ahead.
So I'm a co-owner with my son on the property. It's his first home ever. His pride of ownership has been over the top. His excitement and enthusiasm to raise his family and Anderson has astounded me. And he's truly behaved with the greatest, I think, appreciation of, starting the American dream in this home. It was extremely emotionally hard for him and his family to have to experience this. I've gotten countless great comments and accolades about his behavior and respect to others all his life. I truly know he didn't go out of his way to agitate or to cause this, but I also know how much it emotionally disturbs him and bothers him. He avoids conflict with every fiber of his being. I would ask you to give this every consideration in any modified form or something that allows him to have a little more peaceful enjoyment of his property, which he's truly entitled to. I'm so fearful that pushed to the wrong way and all the silly things that go on in this world, and I never suggest he's this type of character, but they've shown such aggression towards him and such disrespect in his family in the neighbor's behavior. And again, I don't know him. We don't want a feud between parties. That's really what this is about. So it never has to become a police matter. It stays very civil, and we just have both property owners be peaceful residents of their homes, which we're each entitled to. That's really my only comments to please add and ask that you do give consideration to.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Haber, do you have any questions for Mr. Crawford?
None, thank you.
Mr. Shekels?
None, thank you.
Mr. Halpin,
No, no questions.
Mr. Sion.
No, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Crawford. Is there anyone else on the line who'd like to speak in support of the appellant in case 8-2021? Anyone else on the line who'd like to speak in support of the appellant in case 8-2021 BZA? Okay, last call. Is there anyone else on the line who'd like to speak in support of the appellant in case 8-2021? This is an application for a fence at 7383 Rowanta Avenue. If so, please unmute yourself and let me know. Okay, hearing none, is there anyone on the line who'd like to speak in opposition to the appellant in case 8-2021 BZA?
Hi, yes, my name is Shauna Riley.
Shauna Riley. Okay, Ms. Riley, can you please give us your address?
Yes, it's 1396 Blue Orchard Drive, 45230 in the zip.
Okay, 1 second. Please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Okay, please tell us anything you'd like to tell us.
Okay, so I'll get started. I do have some things that I would like to share my screen, if possible, with the board and the public.
Let me get out of my screen.
Yeah, I'll let PJ handle that.
Ms. Riley, is it giving you the option to share if you're at the bottom?
Yes.
Okay, so if you just click that button, and it's
Gotcha.
only going to let you share what you're viewing on the screen, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Can you see my screen?
We can now.
Okay, perfect. All right. Well, thank you, everyone. I'm here today as acting representative for my parents, which are Les and Barb Brooks. They are the owners of 1396 Blue Orchard. We are the neighboring property referred to in Mr. Crawford's letter. We are here today to object to the approval of an 8-foot tall privacy fence for 2 reasons. 1, the potential negative impact to our property, and 2, the letter that was submitted to the board contains false accusations, statements, and fabricated truths to gain the approval for an 8-foot fence. I have video and pictures to share with the board today in support of our objection. I would like to read a statement, however, on behalf of my parents. My parents are deeply upset by this letter that has been sent to neighbors, as well as seeing that this letter has been posted on the Township Board of Appeals page for anyone with internet access to read. Even though my parents know that Mr. Crawford has fabricated statements and things that he has stated are falsified, it doesn't change the fact that these fabrications were put into writing on paper for others to read. My parents have lived in their home nearly 21 years and have never had a problem with any neighbors until now. This letter was sent with the intent to assassinate our character, to create a narrative based on false accusations, in an attempt to gain your approval for the fence variance. We respectfully ask you, the board, to deny the request for the 8-foot privacy fence. We would have no objection to a 6-foot privacy fence, as that meets township regulations and would not potentially cause a negative impact to our property. We would request at Mr. Crawford's expense that a surveyor authorized by the township and the county come out to validate the property lines. We question where our property line ends and where his begins based upon the auditor's website, and I have the aerial images included in my document. What Mr. Crawford has done is unethical. It's a defamation of character and it's slander. In our opinion, to approve this request would be validating Mr. Crawford's false accusations and would be an injustice to our family and the neighborhood. It is one thing to ask for a special permit for something outside of the standard, but it is another thing to do so and try to gain approval by fabricating the truth and making false accusations. Okay. So this first visual that I'm sharing with you is of our privacy fence, and we have taken a tape measure. We have locked it off at 2 feet to show you what the variance of an 8-foot fence against our 6-foot fence would visually look like. Aesthetically speaking, an 8-foot tall fence next to a 6-foot tall fence, or even a 7-foot, since that's been mentioned, would aesthetically be somewhat unappealing to the eye, neighboring up against, our fence line. Should my parents one day wish to sell their home, what type of negative impact will this fence have to potential buyers? Could this deter people from buying because of the cosmetic look and height variances? We would not oppose a 6-foot tall privacy fence, but rather we would be in favor of a 6-foot tall privacy fence. Next, I've taken pictures here. We've taken a tape measure. The first picture is my mother. It's locked off at 6 foot. It's to show you the visual from outside of our kitchen window. And you can see here where the tape measure lands. It's slightly above the playhouse that they have positioned here. The next picture is of my father, which you can't see him because we currently have a basketball hoop stored here that we use in the summer at the pool. But I've circled where the tape measure lands because it blends in with the overhang of their house. But that's showing you what an 8-foot tall fence would actually look like visually from out our window. The third picture here is of my mother, still again with the tape measure at 6 foot, from outside our back door that you referenced earlier, so that you can see from an angle what type of visual that 6-foot fence would in actuality look like and what type of privacy that would provide to Mr. Crawford. And then the fourth picture is of my father with the tape measure locked off at 8 foot. Again, I've had to circle where it ends just because it blends with the trees. But as you can see, an 8 foot, or even let's drop down approximately a foot, 7 foot, the type of visual impact that that's going to have against our property line, that's quite a variance. Okay, so next I have for you a couple of videos. We had to install security cameras because of an incident that happened at his daughter's birthday party that Mr. Crawford mentions in his letter. I'll speak to that momentarily, but in the meantime, the first video you'll see is dated April 16th. This is 5 days after the date of his letter. Mr. Crawford has put into writing that his 4-year-old daughter is afraid of us as neighbors, that she is afraid to be outside if we are outside. I'm going to play this video clip for you. You're going to see Mr. Crawford's daughter comes up to our fence line when my father and Mr. Crawford are having a conversation. She's approximately 2 feet away from my father. This child does not look like she is in fear of my father, as it's been stated in this letter. And then they are going to start to exit to the left. Now, the next video I have for you is dated April 27th of 2021, 16 days after his letter. If I play the video clip, we had grilled out this evening. I'm actually cleaning the grill. I'm going to exit. You see Mr. Crawford here in the backyard near the shed. His daughter is going to come to the child, I'll call it child slide. Mr. Crawford is exiting the yard. It appears that he goes off to the side of the house. His daughter remains in the yard. Now, momentarily, you're going to see me come back into the video. I'll try to speed it up because it's just on a dead air. When I come back, I do not look into their yard. I do not acknowledge whether anybody is there. I go straight to our grill. His daughter looks in my direction. She never leaves that slide. So if that child is afraid, per Mr. Crawford's statement, to be in their yard when we are outside, that child would have followed her father. So the next slide, Mr. Crawford, in his testimony just now, and in the letter that he sent to you, claims that we threatened him, cursed at him in front of his children because his son flashed a flashlight in our yard. This was captured by our security camera. As you're going to see, Mr. Crawford himself is leaning over our property line with a flashlight. He is going to go down to the other end with the flashlight, and he is going to flash it up in the opposite direction. His children are in the back. Yes, his son is playing with a flashlight, but he is nowhere near our fence line. There was no threats or anything to do with his children or his son flashing a flashlight into our yard. You can see Mr. Crawford's retreating back to his property. So that is, again, it's another false statement that has been put in writing that leads to our reputation. It's a negative impact to our character. And that video supports that what he has stated to you under oath is in fact a fabrication. So the next pictures, I have pictures for you here. This is of the interior of our kitchen. Mr. Crawford has stated in his testimony as well as his letter that we, the neighbors, stare out of our windows. We are a corner property. I realize that you've claimed where the pool area is would be the backyard, but our 2 windows in our kitchen have direct line of view into Mr. Crawford's yard. If we are in our kitchen at our kitchen sink, doing dishes, if we're cooking, if we're at the kitchen table, we have a direct line of sight into Mr. Crawford's yard. So to expect a neighboring property to not look out their window or to make claim that we are staring out our window is though to indicate that we're some kind of like stalking them, is completely falsified. We cannot be in our kitchen without looking out the windows, and we are entitled to see outdoor space out our windows. But never was this a situation of us standing in our kitchen and staring at him or his children, as he has stated in his letter. So the next 4 pictures that I have for you here were taken from the outside and towards our home. The top 2 were taken mid-morning. You're going to see the sun is on the back of the house, so there's a lot of reflection. You do not have a direct visual into our kitchen to see clearly if anybody is in there or what they may be doing. Both the top left and the top right pictures of the 2 windows, and then you see our back door over here. The bottom picture on the left was taken in the evening, actually the evening that I had grilled out. I took the picture from our chain link fence line, as you see here. You can see a silhouette of my mom, but you cannot see what she is doing with 100% certainty, where she is looking. So again, this goes back to the claim that Mr. Crawford has tried to justify the need for an 8-foot and or now a 7-foot fence to block our view. When again, as homeowners, if you have windows, you're going to look out your windows. There was no actuality to what he has stated as far as neighbors staring out their windows at him. That's completely false. So the next set of pictures that I'm sharing with you, these were taken from our front yard, showing where our patio furniture is actually located. And as you can see, our table is located behind our privacy fence. Our pop-up gazebo, where we have a sectional and an ottoman and a table, is located behind the privacy fence. These do not have a direct line of view into Mr. Crawford's yard. The only piece of furniture that is on our pool deck is located here. This is a sunbathing lounger. This would have a direct visual through the chain link fence. Sorry, I'm losing my mouse. But they've moved the playhouse to block that visual, which is fine with us. So this is to show the layouts again, to go kind of refute some of Mr. Crawford's accusations about us staring into his yard, his children not feeling comfortable in their yard, with the neighbors being able to see them. There is a lot of falsifications in this letter. So the birthday party accusation in the letter. The reason that I'm highlighting this is because this is pertinent to this situation. We had to install security cameras, again, because of the events of the birthday party. Now, Mr. Crawford has stated in writing in his letter that we came out cursing at his guests, when in actuality, I had come out and I had asked for a child-sized bouncy house to be removed from our privacy fence, as it was not secured to the ground, and when the children were playing on it, it kept shifting and would land against our privacy fence. My concern was that if our privacy fence broke, that bouncy house had the potential to topple over into our pool and children potentially trapped. As a result of this, I was verbally attacked by Mr. Crawford, by Miss Powell, his live-in girlfriend, father, and another gentleman. My parents were at the fence line trying to defuse the situation. My father kept saying to people, "Watch your language, there are children present." My mother at one point was holding Miss Powell's hand, saying, "Jessica, you need to get this under control. This is Charlotte's birthday. You do not want Charlotte to remember her birthday party this way." So then the next morning, I go out to throw away trash. Mr. Crawford's in his yard. He charges the fence line, yelling at me that I ruined his daughter's birthday party. My father happened to be in the kitchen. He came out to address Mr. Crawford as to, again, the reason why we asked for the bouncy house to be pulled away from the fence. Mr. Crawford wanted no part of the conversation, and he told my 70-year-old father to, and I quote, suck his, and I'm going to say man part, because I'm going to be professional with my choice of words, but it's not hard to figure out the slang term that Mr. Crawford used, to my 70-year-old father. Again, after the birthday party incident, we installed security cameras for the protection of our family, protection of our property line, and protection of our overall property. The second bullet on your screen references the back page of Mr. Crawford's letter. In the first paragraph, statement sentence number 2 reads, "The neighbors have informed me that their existing fence is very old and could be knocked over if pushed. This corroborates our statement of fact regarding the chain of events for the birthday party." Moving on. So next, these are the aerial images that I referred to from the auditor's page. We are requesting that Mr. Crawford have a survey done because we question the true property lines. Now, I know that the blue lines are approximations, but it would appear as though our property line potentially extends a little further than what we think. When my parents bought their home, the silver chain link fence was already in place. Mr. Crawford's father initially bought this home. The chain link fence was still initially already in place. So next, I just have a few things to highlight. I have picture documentation to support what I'm going to read. If you wish to see it, I can share it with you. If not, I can answer any questions. But Mr. Crawford mentions in his letter about campfires, that they enjoy campfires. The township may be interested in knowing that Mr. Crawford is violating township burn regulations. He uses gasoline to ignite it. It puts both Mr. Crawford's property, the township property, and our property at risk. I have pictures to support this statement. The second bullet point, Mr. Crawford repeatedly mentions his children and them feeling more comfortable with an 8-foot fence without someone watching them from the house next door. Now, what about the green space that has a walking path that has 100% visibility into their yard? They are not asking to fence that side of the yard. Anyone from anywhere can walk on that path and watch his children in the yard. But their only concern is us, the neighboring property. I have pictures to support this statement. The third bullet, Mr. Crawford states that there was a tree issue. He accuses us of bullying him. He also said it in his testimony, but he didn't say bullying, he said pestering, into paying for the tree. He states that he proved the tree was our property. I would like to know how he proved this and what evidence he has to support him proving this. My parents made the decision to have 2 trees on our property removed in an attempt to rectify the debris falling into our pool. Mr. Crawford has proved nothing. I have the text string between Miss Powell and myself, again, she's the live-in girlfriend, regarding the tree. There was no bullying as Mr. Crawford has falsely accused us of. And the fourth and last bullet, I have documented threats in writing from Miss Powell about an attorney as it related to her cat biting my mother and the bite got infected. Miss Powell took it as far as threatening me with a restraining order for harassment. And I just want to be clear, her cat bit my mother on our property. Appropriate action was taken by us due to lack of vaccinations on her part as an animal owner. Her doctor reported the cat bite to the Department of Health, as did we, but yet we were the ones that were threatened. I have screenshots of the text screen to validate this as well. So at this point, if you would like me to continue and share any pictures that I have regarding these bullets, I'm happy to do so. If not, I'm happy to take any questions you may have.
Thank you. Mr. Haber, do you have any questions for Ms. Riley?
I have no questions. Thank you.
Mr. Shekels,
I have no questions. Thank you.
Mr. Halpin,
No questions.
Mr. Sion.
No questions. Thank you.
Give me 1 second to look through my notes to decide if I have any questions. I don't actually. Okay, thank you, Ms. Riley. Is there anyone else on the line who'd like to speak in opposition to the appellant in case, what is this, 8-2021 BZA? Asking again, is there anyone on the line who'd like to speak in opposition to the appellant in case 8-2021? Okay, last call. Is there anyone on the line who would like to speak in opposition to the appellant or neutral? Is anyone else who'd like to be heard with respect to case 8-2021 BZA? This is 7383 Rowanta Avenue. Okay, hearing none. That is all the testimony, unless the board has any, well, I guess, Mr. Crawford, Clint Crawford, are you still with us? I hope.
Yes, I am.
Okay, does the board have any follow-up questions for Mr. Crawford? Mr. Haber?
I have none, but would you, are you going to allow Mr. Crawford to rebut or to make comment? I don't know if it's germane, but it's.
Well, I was going to put that to the board, actually. I don't want this to turn into a forum for trying to settle disputes between neighbors. That's not what we are here to do, obviously.
Right, right.
And so my inclination was to say, if the board had any specific questions that they wanted Mr. Crawford to address, I was going to give him that opportunity. But I do not think it'll be helpful to either our process or to the appellant or
Right.
neighbors to try to air grievances in this forum. So if you have any questions, let's put them out there. But otherwise, I don't want to get off track.
Well stated. I have no other questions.
Okay. Mr. Shekels, do you have any questions, follow-up questions for Mr. Crawford?
No questions.
Mr. Halpin?
No questions.
Mr. Sion?
No questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, that concludes the testimony in case 8-2021 BZA. That is our third agenda item. The fourth agenda item is discussion of case 8-2021 BZA.
Mr. Chair.
Anyone who's on the line is certainly welcome to stay and listen to the deliberations. You're not required to, of course.
Mr. Chair, this is Brad in the Planning and Zoning Department. Can we just get a quick motion to close the public hearing, please?
Haber here, so moved.
Is there a second?
Sion, I second.
Second.
Please call the roll.
Mr. Sion?
Aye.
Mr. Haber?
Aye.
Mr. Halpin?
Aye.
Mr. Shekels?
Aye.
Mr. Nye?
Aye. Okay, that concludes agenda item number 3. Agenda item number 4 is discussion. Is there anyone who would like to volunteer to start us off?
Yes, Mr. Chair, Haber here. I appreciate your comments before. Regarding this unfortunate circumstance, and I think you put it rather succinctly in that the request for the variance is based on testimony, conflicting testimony about the neighbors. In my view, if I disregard that, which I think we should, as it not being a zoning issue, then the reason for the 8-foot high fences is now moot, and therefore I'm of the opinion that we should, along with staff's opinion, and they state that the spirit intent behind the zoning requirement would not be observed by granting the variance based on the height of the proposed fence, that I am inclined to deny the variance request.
Thank you. I'll just go around the horn. Mr. Shekels, do you want to weigh in?
Yeah, I remember early on when training for this, one of the things that we were taught over and over was we're to rule on the property and anything else, because both neighbors could sell their property tomorrow, no matter what the case is. So we must decide based on the zoning regulations as it applies to the property. Taking that into account, I would not approve an 8-foot fence on this property.
Anything else?
Nope, that's it.
Mr. Halpin?
That's about all I have to say.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear.
I'm in agreement with you guys.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Sion.
I have no additional comments. I would say I'm in agreement as well.
Okay, for my part, I don't think we should disregard the conflicting testimony, but what I think what I didn't hear is why a 6-foot fence, which is permitted, wouldn't be sufficient. I understand the desire for a fence. The neighbor said they didn't oppose a 6-foot fence, which is good because it is permitted. You know, going back to one of the cases we had earlier, we did allow in one case a 7-foot fence, but my recollection of that there was some specific testimony about the topography and where the lights were and where the windows were and so on, that made us think that, yeah, you know, an additional foot there made sense with respect to the specific context of that case. Here, even assuming for the sake of argument that good fences make good neighbors, which I am on record as not necessarily believing, and I think Frost wasn't either, I didn't hear anything in the testimony here that made me think a 6-foot fence wouldn't address any of these concerns, even if that is the test. But of course, the test is set out in the zoning resolution, and it's, you know, will the property yield a reasonable return, et cetera, et cetera. I don't think that weighs in favor of granting the variance here. Is the variance substantial? You know, maybe, kind of, I don't know. I think that doesn't weigh strongly in either direction, but it probably weighs a little bit against the appellant. Essential character of the neighborhood, again, probably weighs a little bit against the appellant here. Government services are obviously not affected. That's fine. The property owner purchased the property with knowledge of the zoning restrictions. That weighs against the appellant. The property owners, this is the big one for me, I think, whether the property owner's predicament can be feasibly obviated through some method other than a variance. And I think the way to obviate this predicament is to install a permitted 6-foot fence, I think, in this case. And so all of those add up to, I do not think the spirit and intent of the zoning requirement would be observed here. And so I also would be in favor of denying this request for the variance. I think that's a unanimous sense of the board. Does anyone want to weigh in additionally? I'll go around one more time. Mr. Haber, anything to add?
Nothing, thank you.
Mr. Shekels?
Nothing, thank you.
Mr. Halpin?
Nothing.
Mr. Sion?
Yeah, just echo what you had said. Yeah, I agree that it could be feasibly obviated through another method. You mentioned the installing the 6-foot fence, which they're allowed to do. Another thing we've discussed in the past and with other properties is just not evergreens, but landscaping barriers. I mean, that's always they're allowed to plant what they want on their side, and that, you know, evergreens, trees, whatnot, they get taller than 6 feet, and so that could be a potential solution for them. But I'm in agreement as well.
That's true. That's a good point.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, there's a clear sense of the board. Is anyone ready to make a motion?
Mr. Chairman, Haber here. Regarding case number 8-2021 BZA at 7383 Wawanta Avenue, I move that we deny the variance request to allow an 8-foot high privacy fence. And I'm going to cite the majority of staff's report, include that as part of the reasoning behind our denying the variance request.
There's a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Will the secretary please call the roll?
Mr. Sion?
Aye.
Mr. Haber?
Aye.
Mr. Halpin?
Aye.
Mr. Shekels?
Aye.
Mr. Nye?
Aye. All right, that concludes item number 4. Before we go on to the final item, agenda item, I just want to say for anyone who's listening, we do not sit to resolve disputes between neighbors, as I said. Nothing that we have said or decided here today is taking sides. We don't think any one of you is right or wrong. That's not what this is about. This is simply about whether a variance should be granted. I hope you can work this out. That's all I'll say about that. The final agenda item is the decision and journalization of this case. In other words, we're going to reduce this to writing. You all, of course, are welcome to stick around for that. There will not be any additional questions at this point, I don't think, so you do not have to. Again, it's a public meeting. We're happy to have you stick around for that, but it is usually rather boring. So if you're leaving, thank you for participating, and let's move on to agenda item number 5.
All right, give me 1 second. I can pull up the draft resolution on the screen.
Mr. Chair, Haber here. I think and I think we talked about this maybe at one of our recent meetings, is that when we do not journal denials.
So,
but if we do that, we do that.
No, you're right. It has typically been our practice when we deny an application that we do not journalize it until the next meeting. I hadn't thought of that. I'll put it to staff. Staff want an opportunity to take some time to craft the resolution. We'll come back to it next month.
So I have a draft resolution. If we can review that and then we can journal next month. I just want to make sure we get everything that the board was.
Okay.
The reasons for denial in there this evening, and then we can journal it next month after our attorney reviews it.
Okay, so let's look at the resolution then, Mr. Haber. If you want to make a motion to table it until next month, and for staff to review with council, I think that makes perfect sense.
Is everyone able to see my screen?
Yes.
If you could zoom in, that would be helpful.
Yeah, sorry.
For us old timers.
How's that there?
Better, thank you.
All right.
I'm good.
I am too.
I'm sitting over here trying to tap my screen to scroll up, not wondering.
I'm doing the same thing with my finger all the time here.
You and your fancy touch screens.
I know, right?
I'm good.
I thought the comment that Mr. Sion put in regarding additional vegetation was worthy to put in here regarding obviation, if that's the right word. The owner's predicament can be easily obviated through some other method other than a variance. Building a 6-foot high privacy fence would be in compliance, as well as the addition of vegetation that that would grow to a height greater than the variance request, if that makes sense.
Hold on. So you're saying in this section, Steve, add something about vegetation?
Yeah.
Earlier in the sentence, building a 6-foot high privacy fence in the rear yard, comma, or installing vegetative screening, comma, would be in compliance. Did that do it?
Good. Perfect. Yep. Thank you.
Yeah. Great. Did anyone have anything else?
I do not.
I do not.
Haber here, you're looking for a motion to.
So we would, yeah, just a motion to continue the journalization until the next BZA meeting.
So moved.
Second.
A second.
Will the secretary please call the roll?
Mr. Sion?
Aye.
Mr. Haber?
Aye.
Mr. Halpin?
Aye.
Mr. Shekels?
Aye.
Mr. Nye?
Aye. All right, that completes our agenda items. Before we adjourn, do we know what next month looks like yet?
We've received one application so far.
Okay, so we'll probably see you on June, whatever that is.
It'll be June 3rd.
Yeah.
June 3rd, perfect. All right, that concludes our agenda. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
So moved.
No objections? Unanimous consent, we are adjourned. Bang. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, guys.
Have a good month.
See you
Everyone.
guys.
Good meeting.
Good luck with
Thank
that
you.
recovery, Paul. See ya.
Thanks. Bye.